Welcome to the live, everybody, and we will get started with the questions unless anybody wants to ask anything now, because obviously people get priority who attend. Right, okay. Discussions. Okay, so with the questions, sometimes I answer them in the live, but that's just more, sorry, in the comments. I'm going to go over it in the live as well. It's just so people acknowledge I've seen it, and sometimes it's to remind me what I want to say or what I was thinking. So even if it looks like it's been answered, I usually go into a bit more detail because I like to think of things later. Right, so Palona said, I've recently had my regular dental check and they told me there's a discoloration on one of my teeth that looks like the start of a cavity. Please could you advise what I could do to reverse this? So with things like this, I'm not a dentist or anything, and I have heard anecdotal stories about people following particular ways of eating, like the Weston A. Price way of eating. The other thing to check is when I was much younger, or all of a sudden, like I ended up getting like some fillings for no reason. And later on, I got a different dentist who said, "Oh my God, you've been tooth grinding, or it's bruxism. Why didn't you get a mouth guard?" So sometimes, if people tooth grind, they don't actually know they're doing it. So that's the first thing to double check because it's kind of something that you'd think people would know, but they don't. Then, when it comes to tooth enamel and hydroxyapatite and things like that, is the tooth is alive, sort of like a bone, so it's got quite a similar mineral composition, but it is different. There are people who say that things like the cell salt, the one that's got the biological fluoride in a very tiny amount can restore, like when the front teeth go a little bit translucent and bluish on the tips. There's people who've said that it's been helpful there. I've never seen anybody grow a tooth back, other than, like I said in one time about the Russian experiments and people using plasma devices and putting an old and a young person in these particular devices, which sounds like sci-fi, but a lot of science and things like this goes on for a while until it gets stopped. Like Dr. Dean Bonley built a bone rebuilding chamber and it got taken down. And then Robert O'Becker's got a lot about bone and electric current in his book, and he got suppressed as well. So sometimes we're led to believe things that can't be fixed, but they can be. And other times people make claims when it's kind of not true. So when it comes to this tooth, I would just, first of all, if it's just one particular tooth and not others, just get maybe a deeper check. But also when it comes to these kind of scannings, when I go to the dentist, he always takes photographs of things and shows me whatever it was, because I had a really old white filling that my tongue found a hole in. So he always kind of shows me. So I know that you can get pictures, and I'm pretty sure with your data that belongs to you, you can ask for the picture. So it might be worth getting another opinion, or just getting a photo of this discoloration, because I don't know whether it's a front tooth or an eye tooth or a back tooth, because there are people who are specialists in looking at teeth all day, every day, who can interject something of value into that. Um, so yeah, there's one of these things. It sometimes, like, I like to see pictures of things, and we're allowed to have data of our, say, MRIs or our X-rays and things like that, and then it helps um, to do this. So then, just from a nutrition perspective, it's just making sure the boxes are ticked for bone and tooth health. Obviously, the teeth, I would imagine, are also subject to the same demineralization that bones are from non-native EMF, then like I've mentioned before in lives, that there are these toothbrushes and mouth devices you can get, the Helio Red and the Bristle, and some people really swear by these. So, like I have one, and I use it sometimes, but there are other people who really specialize it. So I can ask the Helio Red owner, because he is a dentist as well, about what's the extent in which the UV and the red, what does it do? Because sure, the red's going to be more for gum health and soft tissue, but then the UV has its own properties as well. So that's because I can't say for certain whether there's any problems with these light devices in the mouth. I know I've got friends that swear blind with open mouth sunbathing, and with anything membranous areas inside the body, like the gut, there's still like the gut and the mouth and the anus and everything are all part of the same system. So if there's POMC in the gut, the chances are it's also in the mouth, and that's obviously a light receptive area. Then Ignace asks, why are some religions in some ways discouraging meat eating? A common reason is to avoid animal suffering, which is counterproductive for humans as they're hunters by design. Another reason is that meat enhances libido and interferes with meditation, or I think most plants digest worse than meat in a reduced state of tranquil mind. They make him feel worse. Yes, so okay, I think it depends firstly on the religion because things like Buddhism and stuff like that has a sort of compassion to living things, or religions that believe in reincarnation also. Then some animals are sacred, like a cow in Hinduism, and then certain religions find pork, well, they say it's because it's dirty. This leads into the other question about the libido, because Jones and I, Jones Hussein, so he is traditionally from a Muslim background. We did some experiments with pork, and we found that both of our libidos went up a lot. So, he questions everything. He has the channel Excellent Health, and he does know a lot. So we do agree that pork, because of it's an unusual meat, it's not white and it's not red, it's something in between, and it's got different amounts of amino acids, but it's something that consuming it all the time isn't a good idea. It's like a something that you have sometimes, not all the time, but it's still got interesting properties. Um, Definitely Jesus ate meat, and even the Dalai Lama, because I wanted to talk about this to people who it was the questioning about spirituality and diet, and whether with religions it's just an idea and people didn't really understand. But then there are people who study the Bible in depth, and the Cain and Abel dispute was over an offering that was plants versus a cow, and the cow's obviously highly prized as an offering to what people would believe in a higher God, because they never sacrifice a bread, or sorry, an apple or an onion or something. It's always an animal sacrifice. So it might just be that people ate less meat because it was viewed to be for only important people. So they were told, oh, you don't have it because of another reason. Because some of religion, I don't really understand the logic at all, particularly some kosher rules, the very deep ones. Some kosher food, like the whole thing about the Shabbat and not flicking a light bulb or ripping any toilet paper, the kosher and like Islamic preparation, sometimes it's to do with the risk of food poisoning in hotter countries. So there's lots of different reasons, but if you look at humans' gut and teeth and the way in which we use weapons, and humans hunt because we have lots of endurance, whereas the animals tend to sprint off and get tired, and the humans just keep walking, and they often would take spears and things. So they're definitely designed to eat, to hunt, and we have the intellectual capacity and the organization and the skills to do so. So I completely agree that we're hunters biologically, and we're omnivores as well. Humans can eat a wide variety of things. Whether it's good for them at that particular time depends on their health and what the plant is. And yeah, there's in terms of digestion times, meat does go through quicker. The opposite side of that is some people say that carbs and things calm them, but that's because there's another reason underneath of why that they're anxious because carbs can release serotonin, but then high tryptophan and tyrosine meats like turkey and other things can also raise tryptophans. Sorry. So, yeah, so I think it's something that some people, I respect their religious practices and they want to do that and because they've done it for thousands of years, and other people look more deeply into understanding of what builds a human, and we are made of meat, not sort of vegetables. But I think vegetables do, and plants and things and fruit have their place for people if they choose to choose so. And then some people find that every time they eat a plant, it doesn't agree with them. So that's and other people find that there is a day when they just feel like having some fruit or a salad or something. And often you just have to always test on yourself that if eating plants makes you feel irritable, then it's obviously your body telling you it's not right for you. Then Harvey's asking, with menthol crystals in the bathtub, any good and how many? Yeah, with menthol, you can get it as a aromatherapy oil as well. And it's like I think it comes with menthol and eucalyptus. It's for vasodilation and dilation of the breathing pathways. So I think it's totally fine because it's pretty standard. You can get menthol everywhere. I don't know about the crystals. I've never used them. I think some crystals can be quite concentrated and abrasive if you get them on your hands, but if they're diluted in a like a giant bath with liters of water, it's pretty safe. And then it's just down to you for smell and stuff like that. Um, Then Elle's asking, do I have to be afraid of poo? I often lay in my garden. There's lots of birds nesting in trees, and there are traces of poo here and there. Yeah, yeah. With stuff like nature, you just have to accept that humans have lived with animals and birds for ages, and things like dog poo is a problem because the worms that live in dog poo, the route into the particular kind of worm likes to eat or feed on stuff that's at the back of the eye. So dog poo is a bigger menace, which is why I'm not even going to go into the dog poo wars we have here. With bird poo, I don't know the exact composition of it, but it's really, really, it's full of like uric acid and it's very concentrated because you can't use it unless it's diluted. Even chicken poo, we used to use a tiny bit in the garden because it's just so strong. So it's gonna discourage things from living in it. If people are thinking about bird flu or H5N8, it tends to be isolated just to birds because they're so different to us because they're like a relic of a dinosaur that it tends not to kind of cross into us. And also, um, obviously, you wouldn't if you get it on your hands, you wouldn't eat or anything like that straight away. So it's just like common sense because there's poo everywhere on everything when scientists have swabbed it. Right, I just need to get something. All right. So yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so with the birds, I think also pigeons themselves can, there's something that they carry, but it's like everything. When people have swabbed stuff, that there's poo particles all over the place, and even if you share a house with somebody and you're really clean, you still end up transferring your gut bacteria by fecal oral methods and things. Right. Then Leslie's asking, in my podcast with Professor Seeger, he talks about the effect on the thyroid gland with cold. Does this include the same effect as someone who does not have a gland, as it wasn't covered? Yeah, so with this one, if there's no gland there, then the cold can't affect it, but you'll get all the benefits of the other effects of cold, such as more brown fat. So if you take T4 thyroxine, brown fat encourages T4 to convert into T3, which is active. That's why a lot of people are on meds than they shouldn't be because they're not doing enough, for example, cold exposure. So that's why they're not converting. Also, there's all of the benefits on the sex hormones, which are kind of a separate pathway. You do need thyroid hormone to make pregnenolone, which then gets made into sex hormones. But like I said, normally when people have the gland removed, they're given medication. So you're not going to get any thyroid effects because there isn't an organ to be affected, but you may get some better conversion of T4 to T3. You're also going to affect leptin and insulin in a positive way. So that's kind of separated from the thyroid. So even if someone doesn't have a thyroid gland, it's still fine to do cold thermogenesis. They might have to be a little bit more cautious about something really cold because when we get cold and shiver, the body does upregulate thyroid a bit to warm us up, but also other hormones like adrenaline or norepinephrine, epinephrine will also go up and they metabolically enhancing. So you'll get the heating effect. Or also, the body tends to adapt that if it's lost one part of a system, other systems then get better to compensate. That's why, for example, if people have a thyroid issue or the medication's not right, they can wake up in the night feeling quite agitated because the metabolic effects of thyroid failed. So other hormones like adrenaline and cortisol jumped in to keep the metabolism going, and then they are waking up hormones. So that is kind of a separate thing, which I just thought about then. But the point is that other systems, the body has sort of backups. They might not be as good as the real thing, but it'll do substitutions where possible, but with the exception of things like insulin, where there's only one hypoglycemic hormone in the body. There's lots of hormones that regulate metabolism and such like. So it's not, insulin is kind of separate because obviously they take exogenous insulin. So it's perfectly fine for people without a thyroid to do cold, and it's just good to experiment with it because you might need to develop a slightly different protocol for yourself. But then people with a functioning thyroid get the cold a bit wrong. Sometimes they overdo it or they're not quite doing it long enough. So there's like wiggle room, but definitely do it and just see what happens with the really short exposures, when it's really cold and people go in for 1 to 4 minutes, so much gets stimulated separate from thyroid that you'll still definitely feel something and get a benefit. Would there be, Balance asking, would there be some at home available way to measure how well water's structured, like difference between 1 minute the sun versus 10 minutes, or maybe some of the intentions? No, not really, because to measure water structure, people do things like Raman spectroscopy, and you need a laboratory for that. So with water structuring, like I've said, a lot of it's just returning the water back to its natural form because water doesn't like to be kept still. It likes to be on the move. It likes to be exposed to sunlight. It likes to have minerals and things in it. So the piezoelectricity of the minerals or the ions can form this part of these structures. Um, so when it comes to like what's better, this is where people will tell you, "Oh, my thing's better," but it just comes down to personal choice. Some people base it on the taste of the water. Other people, you have, see if they feel like energized or different. But from a laboratory perspective, you do need kind of more sophisticated equipment to actually identify specific structures. But also, just because something's got more structure than another, it comes down to information as well. Because with the structuring, that's why I was talking to, I think, Dedra and Balance. It's about how if you want to start with a clean slate, you can use UV light on distilled water because it'll remove any structures or resonances or information on that kind of quantum level, and then it sort of wipes clean. So and then when it comes to making structured water, it's sort of just something over the years you kind of gather new things. And some people love analemma wands. I've been experimenting with different kinds of water. The elixir water from that I got from Holland. That man, maybe I've not mentioned him yet, from Blue Earth. He's like a water expert, and he makes other things like harmonizers out of eggs and fills it with something special. But he's very coveted for his stuff. So with water, I think a lot of it is there's loads we don't really even fully understand yet. And you'd have to just go by taste because the Blue Earth person sells this funny thing that looks like a candle that you can bury in the ground for plants, or you can put your water on it. Some people really like tensor rings. The sun's obviously really important, and the key idea is you want to move the water. That's why vortexing or stirring with an analemma wand, that's a natural behavior of water, that when it flows, there's always little pockets of vortices as the river sort of winds around. So it's the moving part is useful to consider as well. And then you can stack all of these things together, like vortexing at the same time as it's out in the sun and on the ground, or vortexing on top of some other device. Um, so yeah, they do work. I mean, with the water structuring, like I've said, it's still things that people we don't fully understand. You can even structure water with things like infopathy device, and that's sort of imprinting water with information, like the resonance of, say, something like, I don't know, benzodiazepine or vitamin B12 and things like that. And then of the holy water making and the affirmations, that's a mixture because you're also telling yourself the same as you're putting it in the water. And on a subconscious level, we only process like a tiny percent of what's happening consciously. And then there's all sorts of unconscious information that we pick up on, especially stuff that we say to ourselves on a regular basis or think, because it's sort of like a pattern building. Okay, let's see. Do we have any more questions? No. I'm just going to see if there's anything in the Facebook group that requires a deeper answer. Oh yeah, Ignace posted a really interesting thing about biogeometry. So it is definitely something that geometrically you can look at the whole world and physics through patterns and geometry. So they've got things like Metatron's cube, and DNA's got lots of really interesting biogeometry. So is the heart. Then when you do things like looking at how far the moon is away from the sun and measuring different parameters in pyramids that people have built and look at the ratios, then things like tetrahedrons are really important, like the platonic solids are probably in here as well. So the periodic table is built of nests of platonic solids. Then when it when it comes to things like charge collapse and those kind of things like Dan Winter's work and anything related, the dodecahedron is really important for effective charge collapse and distribution. So yeah, there's like I can't say I'm an expert in it by any means, but the deeper you go into the geometry, you start to see patterns and things all over the place, especially in biology. Then some people sort of use things like, say, the Metatron's cube as what they would say as walkie-talkies on a quantum level. Ian Mitchell from Wizard Science was telling me about that. So it's definitely worth looking into it because there's all sorts of, it's like looking into ancient texts and decoding the Bible. There's all sorts of really interesting things that you'll find about geometries of, like, say, golden ratio in the body itself, of the distance between different limbs and the shape of the heart and where something's positioned. And then looking down the center of the DNA helix and looking down how proteins fold, you've got that dodecahedron again, because it's to do with propagating of charge. So DNA and proteins don't just act as molecular machines. They've got the ability to propagate and distribute charge. Like there's electric currents and things and all sorts of interesting stuff like that that goes on with DNA and proteins. And then when you look back at the geometry of physics and the universe, you can see, oh yeah, there's that dodecahedron again. Oh, that must mean something wants to charge collapse or create longitudinal waves. So yeah, there's lots to it. Yeah, Michelle was asking, she said asking about Australian members because she said we're off to Exmouth, lots of snorkeling and sun protection. We're all tanned and haven't used sunblock for years. However, the water, um, if we're in the water for a couple of hours, do we put sunscreen on? So I just said for this one, I use the zinc oxide if I'm in places like that because water humongously reflects UV light. So high UV places like El Salvador or even the middle of summer in the UK and water, people get burnt easily because of the reflection. And with the zinc oxide, it's kind of sure it's going to block some of the UV, but it comes to the point where you can get really horrifically burned. And it's usually you put the zinc oxide on the real targets like the décollage on women, the tops of the ears, noses, and things like that. Because that's the problem with the water. People get burnt, you get burnt, but you don't notice for a bit, and then it's too late. So that's what I would suggest there. There's people open to suggestions because when you are swimming, like you can't, I'm sure there's possibility of some kind of hat or something to shield it. But then you've got sort of your snorkel mask as a sort of lens. Then because the water itself's cool, people can get tricked and then it can be windy. So people can get tricked again because they think it's cold when it's actually not because the wind is cooling them. So that's what I do. Just because it's the water's a bit of a trap. That's all. The snow does it as well. People get really horrifically burnt also with the snow and the some people wear shielding for that. Snow. I've got a friend who got really badly burnt. He's a quantum person as well from the snow. Let me see if there's anything else that's no, I don't think there's anything else that's relevant to everybody because sometimes the question somebody asks is very, very specific just to them. So so I'm just scrolling through. So no, we've not got anything that's relevant for everybody. Okay, so if we have no more questions, then we will wrap up for today. And thanks for the questions. And like I said, I've met quite a lot of interesting people recently. So it's still trying to collate even information. Like I'm just writing a Substack now about France, and I went there in October, so I've got so much stuff to pass on. Oh, hi, Lucy.
Hi, how are you,
Oh, hang
Sarah?
on, let me just get my headphones on. Right, okay.
Hi. Yeah, no, we definitely want to hear about all the people you've been meeting recently over the past, couple months. And I know you've been traveling, so that's going to be interesting. And your latest Substack are very, very good, so very informative. And thanks for sharing all that information. I have one comment on two things that you recommended to me or to the group like a few months ago. One is the Egoscue method.
Oh,
I believe
yes,
I
yes,
pronounced it correctly.
yes.
I've been kind of nursing an elbow problem, so I've been doing his exercises, which is really good. The other thing is the Franklin method that you
Oh, yeah.
recommended. So I'm doing now the pelvic floor exercise. So I'm kind of really into that, and I actually just got the book for the specific to the pelvic health, from the Franklin method. So anyway,
Oh,
I'm
I've what's that
incorporating
book?
that.
What's that book called again? Because I've got it as well. It's
This one, it's called Pelvic Power
oh,
for Men
yes,
and
that's it.
Women.
Pelvic Power. Yes.
Yeah, so it's super interesting, and I love the exercise. So I listened to the exercise on the website. I bought the series, whatever. So I do them like the 17 exercise. It's really awesome.
Hmm.
It's really great. And the one again from Egoscu, that's really helping my elbow, to get rid of the pain. So that's great. So thanks for sharing all these tips and keep letting them coming.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for bringing this up because the good thing about Egoscue and Franklin is absolutely anybody can do them. Other than I think some of the positions some people can't get down on the floor, but because you've got all the time in the world to do it, there's I can't even some of the pelvic power is just visualization. So some people actually can't move that much. So they have to, you have to visualize all of these muscles moving. And the Chinese are the experts on visualizing and not doing any training and still beating everybody in the Olympics.
Mm.
The whole thing about the way in which the Franklin method describes movements and body parts, even if people can't do everything, they can do the imaginary side. And there's all sorts of different positions because it's designed to be really, really easy. And it's very much, I would say it's the most mind body of all because you have to visualize. And then the Egoscue, I just think it's something really helpful for people at home. The back part of the Egoscue is really good because some people are in horrific pain and they can't get to anybody over the weekend and it's something that's always been really helpful for me when I used to teach Pilates and somebody'd come in all hunched over and then I used to add Franklin into Pilates and people always really enjoyed it and like I said I've got that book as well and there's another one, there's another book I've got more than one. So yeah, thank you. And there's also this weird Franklin equipment you can buy, the one that looks like the inflatable jelly bean and you can
Oh
do,
yeah, I think I've seen
yeah.
those. What I got was the two orange balls so that I
Oh
put
yeah.
under the pelvis to
Oh
do the
yes.
exercise. Yeah, so that's really good. And maybe one last question to you. What is the book you're reading right now? Or the books I'm sure you
Oh,
have, if
actually,
you're like,
I just Catherine Clinton's book, her quantum
oh,
biology book arrived today. But weirdly, I actually on the day before somebody wrote a giant post about her book because they'd never heard of her and they were raving about it. So I actually screenshotted it and sent it to her. And then the next day, my book came because I pre-ordered it, and the person and she's a really nice person, Dr. Clinton. Sometimes I can't understand what she says, but I think with a book and everything, it's been edited, so I've got that. That's I had to completely reorganize my house recently, so I've actually got like the books out. And Robert O'Becker was going to be the next read, but then Dr. Clinton's book is arrived and it's obviously easier to read than Body Electric. I have read Robert O'Becker's work before, but Catherine Clinton's book is like a really good, more modern quantum biology. But Robert O'Becker, that was sort of on my list as well, because he's got something like 100 papers too, and some of it's too detailed and it's not kind of relevant, but those are the two that's my on my list.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, maybe Catherine's book. I saw that it's been published now, so maybe I'll order it. But I have like stacks of books. It's just insane. So I need to prioritize and keep going through. I just finished the Sheldrake's son's book on mushrooms,
Oh
and
yeah, I've
so
read that one. Yeah, that's the what's it called? That's Merlin Sheldrake. It's something like what's it called again? I've definitely read it.
yeah, I can't remember now. It's downstairs. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, that was interesting. Well written and everything.
Oh yeah, that's great. It's something like Entangled World or something like that.
Yes. Yeah, Entangled for sure, but I can't remember. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely worth reading because people might think, oh, that's going to be so boring, but it's like so weird and interesting of all of the roles that the fungi play and how they work. And it's definitely it's kind of the book that somebody who's not interested in mushrooms, even my parents read it and said, oh, that was so good. And I can't say that they are biologists or, they like eating mushrooms, but they didn't really understand like the depth. So yeah, there's way people, it's not just a book about like biology and like medicinal mushrooms. It's way more than that. So yeah, that's interesting. And also other Rupert, the daddy, he's got lots of good reads as well.
It's so interesting. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I
Maybe I'll say now that you mentioned, the father, I know he was on in a few episodes of the telepathy tapes, but I listened to one in from season two. Actually, I'm going to send in the Facebook page
yeah,
one in particular that was extremely interesting about frequency in the universe and all that. And I'll point exactly to which, minute, like
yeah.
50 minutes in or whatever, so people don't waste their time. But I would like to hear your take about this one. The guy is obviously not Sheldrake, but it's another person. Anyway, so I'll put that in the Facebook page as well. So
Oh yeah, definitely, because Rupert Sheldrake's been around for ages, and I think the book "The Science Delusion" is really good about the 10 reasons not to trust science all the
mm,
time. But then he's got loads like the sense of being stared at. There's one he's got with Mark Vernon all about angels and physics, and
I haven't
uh,
read that one. I did read one of his books. I can't remember which one it was. But yeah, anyway, so yeah, the one on angels, and that one I would be interested in reading.
yeah, it's kind of not quite what I expected, but I still read and listened all the way through. So it's worth listening to, and it's for physicists and for religious people because Rupert Sheldrake, he does talk a lot about his religious history because he used to be an atheist, but he's got another book all about the benefits of spiritual practices, even if you don't believe in anything.
Mm,
With lots of, and he obviously is quite pretty solid scientifically as well. So yeah,
yeah.
and he's easy to understand, and he's still alive as well. I think he's something like 87 or something now, but he's still around, and that's important
Wow.
as well.
And do you have any guest speakers that you're thinking to interview in the next, couple months?
Yes, I've got to upload one from Professor Ralph Ottopol. I have to edit it now. Then Glenn Jeffries, I'm going to ask to come on. And also, I've been trying to get Konstantin Korotkov on for a while. We just can't seem to match. He's in Russia, but I've met him and he did say he'd do it. It's just I'm often, when he wants to do it, I'm in a really horrible time zone. So I
Okay.
definitely, those people are lined up. So I'm trying to. So Ralph will be next, but that's being edited. But I really want Glenn Jeffries, and my colleague has interviewed him, and he's in the UK and very friendly, and apparently also extremely nice.
I thought you had interviewed him before, but maybe I'm mixing up
Oh,
with
it's
the
yeah, Scott Zimmerman. He's a colleague of Scott Zimmerman, and
yeah,
then I think he also knows Bob Fosbury as well. So it's like a trio of them that talk
yeah.
about near infrared and red light and things like that.
I
But I
think
think
Huberman just
yes.
interviewed Glenn Jeffries. I haven't listened. Have you listened to the Huberman
No,
interview?
weirdly, I was actually going to listen to that today because I thought I need to listen to that interview because, if I'm going to ask him to come on my podcast, of course he's going to expect
Yeah.
that I've seen that. So it's and Huberman asks good questions, and he understands a lot of what
Yeah, he's open-minded, for sure. And when are you going to have a retreat that you're going to set up?
Yeah, actually, this is something that's in the pipeline because I in France at the end of April, because I'm going to France anyway, because I was going there to support a colleague and be a customer for an academy that people want to start, that they want me to be part of, but I'm hesitant to collaborate yet. But I said I'll go as the customer and promote my colleague Ralph. And then Ralph said there's a week at the end of April where he hasn't got anything booked because he wanted to kind of plan for September. So the chances are, if I was going to do a retreat, there's a possibility of a sort of one in April in Perpignan. But then I more would rather go there and plan it and then launch one
Mm,
for September because it gives people more time to get ready because if they might live in Canada or America or they might not
yeah.
be European. So, but on the other hand, when somebody's just doing something to practice, normally it's a good deal because Ralph, he's European and we tend to charge less for our retreats because I've been to quite a lot of American ones and they've been really expensive, but that's kind of a bit like
I know.
weddings sometimes. And then my Substack I'm just writing at the moment is all about Perpignan because obviously I'm introducing the area to people gradually and introducing Ralph to people because my audience hasn't met Ralph Ottopol yet. So it's kind of he's an ex-engineering professor and he is very good, but when somebody's a bit different to what people are used to, but he's a really good person
What's
and
his last name again?
Ottopol.
Waterfall.
He does trauma release and geomancy, and I think that the geomancy side might be a bit too weird for some people in my audience, but
Huh.
everybody understands trauma and blockages, and Ralph's really expert at removing those in people with his method.
That's good. Yeah, I'm actually doing a yoga class, a weekly at my studio, and it's a trauma-informed yoga class. And the goal is to get to shake
Oh
our
yeah.
legs or whatever. And it's really good. It's really good to kind of just get the energy of the body, whatever is stuck, kind of to just get out. So,
Oh,
anyway,
that's really interesting you mentioned that because with myofascial unwinds, that used to happen with it can happen doing Franklin method or myofascial release or Bowen therapy because it's like when an animal gets traumatized, it just goes and runs away from the lion, and then in private it'll just do a load of shaking to
yeah.
over recover. But there's a next level to that, which is Professor Lung's work, which is like a deeper kind of unwind, and it's called a spontaneous. But he's also an expert in movement. So there's definitely a big parallel between movement and energy
Mm.
release and the zapping, which he calls it, or putting people into spontaneous, is like a more deeper level than just the Maya. That's something else which is valuable. But his one, people do specific movements and positions like looking like a deer or a bear or a monkey, and then you can trace it back to a particular organ or a meridian. So this idea of these spontaneous movements to release blockages or traumas or just indicate to somebody where there might, because sometimes the conscious person doesn't know why they're ill, but the body does know. So if you give it
A
permission
hundred
to
percent. Yeah, 100%. Anyway, so interesting. So thanks for sharing all that, Sarah.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you. And also with yoga, like lots of people just burst into tears in yoga and Pilates classes, especially when people do anything hip opening and they used to get really embarrassed. But because it's happened so many times, I've never had somebody go into like a myofascial release or spontaneous in Pilates or yoga, but it's probably because it's not socially acceptable. Whereas,
Mm,
say, if people are in the laughter yoga classes, you're supposed to laugh, so everybody does. And then if somebody's having myofascial treatment and one person has has an unwind, the mirror neurons think, oh, I'm supposed to do that as well. And then they all start doing it. Same as a hypnosis show that once one person goes into hypnosis, it seems that it's infectious and other people do as well. So I think it's sometimes when you make the right environment and make it safe and socially acceptable, people let themselves do this because it can look really weird when people suddenly start shaking or jumping up and down or spinning around in a circle or crawling on the floor. But you just let them do it and they're usually really enjoying it. And there's some kind of deeper meaning to it. And Professor Lung's more about thinking, okay, there's a way to do a diagnosis. Or sometimes he just says, I've got no idea, but the person did all of this and then lay down and slept on the floor, and then suddenly their back pain or the depression had gone. So there's all sorts that can actually suddenly happen spontaneously when people do this shaking. And if people can get that to happen, it's really beneficial.
Yeah, that's how I understood it. So yeah, I really enjoyed that class. So that's
Oh
good.
yeah, do people actually go into an unwind?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because if one goes, they all do it, because it's sort of like it's like a herd thing, or people are just being given permission to do that. Whereas you'd think, but and you might people might do exactly the same movement in a class of just ordinary yoga or Pilates, and they just behave like everybody else. But it could be that there's too many verbal instructions in some classes, and people are too conscious because they're trying to do it properly. Whereas if you just say to people, just move, there's no right or wrong. And if this happens, just follow the movement. They've given permission to just do whatever they want. Like people that just dance on their own to weird stuff in the living room. That's a sort of myofascial unwind, I think, because I know people that do that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, haven't danced in my living room for a little bit, but I should probably do that maybe this weekend.
Yeah, there was a big obsession with something called five rhythms ages ago in Leeds, and people used to go and do that and really enjoy it. And they all like did their own thing, dancing to their own tune. So it's like everything. There's every tradition or every kind of thing you look into, there will be some kind of this people moving in this weird way. But it's really important to experience that, or because you just never know what's going to happen. And sometimes we don't know we had a blockage until it's gone. That was my experience when I had a session with Ralph. You think, oh, I don't have a blockage, and all of a sudden a giant one comes out, and you feel much better. So even if people think, oh, I don't have any blockages, how you might.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I'm playing with tuning forks right now,
Oh
and
yeah.
I'm reading another book of Eileen McCusick. And I can't remember, this one is really more practical. So I'm getting to that part, but she's going into more like right now the plasma, and she's fascinated by by plasma,
Oh
which
yeah.
is so interesting as well. So
Yeah, is it her? Because this is definitely something I saw and bought off Amazon. Somebody's just recently, really recently released a book on plasma. Was it her? Like a book just on
no,
plasma?
that wasn't her, but
I can't
yeah, I
remember who
don't
it
know
was.
yeah.
I definitely sometimes I'll hear a book and I'll quickly jump onto Amazon and either heart it or buy it, and then I forget, and then I go back into my library and find something, because it's so easy to see something and think, oh, that looks really good, I'll buy that later, and then forget.
Yeah, I do the same thing. But there's a book she mentioned in her book that's called The Sky Electric. I don't know if you've heard of
Oh,
that book.
I've heard of it, but I don't own it, and I don't know exactly what it's about. Is
Okay,
it?
but again, I can. This one explains the universe as an electric universe.
Oh yes, yeah. Robert Temple likes that. The Electric Universe is a Birkeland current,
Well,
and
Robert
it's
Temple, I read that book, another book, but this one, I think it's called really The Sky Electric. I hearted it on my Amazon page, but I need to look into it. I just found that out
oh yes, I
yesterday.
have heard of it, and it was Robert Temple who mentioned this. It's quite a
Oh,
complicated book, The Sky Electric, but I've definitely that reminds me now. I need to. I might have even bought it. It might be is it one of those quite expensive, hard to get books?
I don't think so. I don't have, well, my phone is right in front of me, but yeah, no, I need to look into it. I don't know, but she was highly
Yeah,
recommending that book.
yes, it's Robert Temple's recommended it as well. Yeah, the electric, is it the one, The Electric Sky by Donald Scott?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's yeah, definitely. And there's also The Electric Sky by Glinda McKinney, so it could be either ones of these
I think it's
two.
the first one because I don't recall the name, the
Yes,
second name.
yeah, it is one of those like slightly more expensive books that there's no Kindle.
Oh,
It doesn't matter because I'm gonna heart it, because like I'm like you, I've got like a gigantic pile that I haven't started properly, and like I'll buy them. Like I've even got, I think I found John Ott's book and Roland Van Wyck's book.
the Jonah book on light.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have this one. I started like during at the start of COVID, I signed up for the building biology training from the German Institute, which I completed after like 2 years, by night, whatever, but I never took the exam. And in that training, they were recommending that book, which was available again. That's 5 years ago. So yeah, I did read that book. That was really, really good
Actually,
from
if you did
German.
building biology from a German institute, that's
Yeah,
exactly
from
what
the
Ralph does. Ralph does building biology and energy clearing in land and buildings. I just mentioned only the trauma, so he's probably because he's German, so
Oh, wow.
he probably knows, and also he trained with Professor Klinghardt as well, the one that does the
Oh yeah, I
ART.
know. He's so famous. Yes,
Yeah, so
absolutely.
Ralph
Wow.
trained with him and has adapted because Ralph likes to make things more efficient. He doesn't like waffling. He just gets straight to the point, and he kind of likes to measure everything and be efficient. So he's a huge fan of Dr. Kleinhardt, but also if it's a German building biologist thing, I'm 99% sure he will know what it is or even have been part of it because
I'm
that's his
sure
area.
100% he might be certified or something. Yeah, it's one of the old it's the main one that started in the world before even the US one. It's called the Institute of Building Biology, I think in Germany. I something like that. But yeah, so they have a full program that I signed up to again years ago. I never took the exam, which I should probably study and apply for the exam. But anyway, so
Yeah, you might as well because if you've done all the work, and I think it's something it might have updated itself, but it depends what they've been doing because sometimes we think something's all brand new, like fascia, but people have been at it for like 50 years. It's just it wasn't mainstream, and the Germans and their land, they are ahead of us because Ralph like can't understand why people have never heard of it, whereas he travels around Germany doing lectures and they're all packed. I think the Germans are just really keen on the building biology and that they're ahead of
yes.
us, and they have different ways of doing it. So it's definitely something, and they also are really into water and soil and all of that as well, the agricultural side of it, because if the building's got a good energy, then you have to clear the land around it to match the building. So yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be something he'll know about.
It's so interesting. All right, so you need to get that retreat going, Sarah. Let for people in the US and kind of just give us enough time so we can plan and buy tickets and whatnot. So don't rush it. Don't rush it.
Yeah, there might be something. The thing is, because like of all of a sudden, everything's all like coming at me at once, and I have to get Ralph's. I have to before I do anything. I promised I'd get up. I have to promote his thing, and then now he's told me, oh, at the end of April, there's a spare week. So the thing is, with Perpignan and that area, I'm just writing about the weather and the food, and if I was to do a retreat there, I'd probably do something like one day of cooking of different foods because like show some people something keto, then how to make wraps without gluten. I might introduce a little bit of the new. I was talking to people about the Chinese philosophy of looking at food as each food can be hot heating or cooling or damp or dry or and then you
Mm,
match it to symptoms, and they've been at this for like thousands of years, so nobody's fully sort of understood their science, but that's the whole thing with China and Russia. They've been at science separate from us for so long, and then we can't understand their language, and they've got completely their own way of interpreting the universe. But then when you break it all down, it's just they're using different words and things. So I definitely am very keen on this idea of the Japanese and the Chinese healing food idea, because I think it's something that you can apply the rules to everybody, because we all get itchy or hot, and ginger is ginger regardless, and then you've got heating and cooling and damp and mucus, and some people are very mucusy and they think, oh, it's only dairy that does it, but there's all sorts of interesting other little takes on it, and I think it's the kind of thing that people can, they know what they eat or like to eat and what their symptoms are. So if you tell people what the rules are, they can go away and think, well, I've got this, that, and the other. And then I keep eating these foods, and oh, whoops, I'm eating a huge amount of heat foods and wondering why I'm itching.
mm.
And
Yeah.
that's why the whole thing about food, it might look like one minute I'm doing, like with everything, no matter what, I think when I've solved everything, the whole other door opens and I think, no, 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 there's like more and more and more again. But it's like everything, everybody's on a journey and nobody can know everything. And even if somebody knew everything and told me 20 years ago, I wouldn't understand anyway. So, it's,
Yep.
and
Agree. That's
I,
why we're on this earth.
yeah,
So,
exactly. And some people discover the perfect diet really early, but it takes them 20 years to find the right movement for themselves. And other people can meditate straight away, but then constantly can't seem to find the food that matches them. Because yeah, I completely agree with Ignis about the questions about us being hunters, but I'm sure we gathered also at the same time and grew. But I categorically accept that some people just really don't tolerate plants because it might be what's been sprayed on them, it might be it's been bred in a
yeah.
funny way. And then there are people that categorically tell me, and I believe them, that if they do keto and carnivore too long, they don't like it. And I'm the
Mm.
same. So it's like sometimes once you think, okay, I've done the best I can for me, then you kind of find a category you're weak in. But then all of a sudden you think, oh, I've got it with movement. And then a whole other door of completely different movement, like Professor Young and his Fa Jing, which is like the humongous burst of energy that people will be horrified at, thinking, oh, you're going to rip ligaments and hurt yourself, versus something really gentle like Franklin. But I think everything has its place. And also, the body loves variety with movement, like it loves to learn new things. And then, even with foods, I just think it's something that I've always been puzzled about how I wonder what the Japanese and Chinese think of us, have people being vegan and carnivore and fighting, and then yet they must be completely bamboozled at our way, the Western way of dieting. Whereas, and I think there's a wealth of information in there, and also, of course, Korean and Thai and everybody, because they're sort of in a similar region. There has to be some really useful information there that we can
Yeah.
use ourselves, even though they grow weird things or delicious things like durians and dragon fruits, which are their crops. We have the same thing sometimes, and there are obviously Chinese people that live in Europe and do their own Chinese cooking and swear by it. So there has to be something to it, and I just think it's interesting.
Yeah, no,
Um,
absolutely. Anyway, before we wrap up, so I know I feel for you, Sarah, that currently you have probably a dozen doors open and you're just like going all out with all these different avenues, exploring. And so that's
oh
great.
yeah, definitely. And then this week, this is kind of like because I love animals and nature, and and I was manifesting for ages pets and a zoo, and I always wanted an owl and a crow. Well, anyway, unbeknown to me, there's been animals living in my roof for goodness knows how long, and they really damaged it and made holes and built nests. So I found a big hole because I've been tidying like a 20 by 20. So I rang up somebody on Sunday to say I've got a hole. So they came and they were gradually dismantling the roof, and it got worse and worse and worse. This was rotting, and this is so basically I had to have the whole roof taken off and a whole new roof put on, and it happened just this week. So when sometimes something like that happens, like I was irritated, but you just can't help it. So when they opened the roof, it was like a haunted house of like things flying out, and there was hedgehogs sleeping up there because hedgehogs climb up the kind of house I've got because they like to go in the bathroom and have
Oh,
sex with
wow.
they have sex with the toilet roll, with a toilet brush because it happens in Wales. It sounds like a rumor, so they've climbed up and the holes are that big, like anything's got in. And there was an owl in there because I've heard an owl recently. I thought, oh, good, there's an owl in an area. Then I was just, like living in my roof,
It's in your roof.
and then there's hedgehogs have climbed up the edge because it's got like a pebble dash, so it's really easy for them to get up. It's not smooth, so I had to leave them because they're sleeping and they're not going to do anything right now. So yeah,
Oh
that
my
was
God, you had a lot of friends up there.
yeah, exactly. And it's something because I've been away a lot. They probably thought, oh, we'll get
Oh,
in
that's right.
when she,
Yeah.
and they thought, oh no, with the humans back, let's all be really quiet. So yeah, it was very weird, and like the builders just said, I've just have no idea how all this got in here and how you didn't notice. But anyway, they completely just like damaged like everything. But and the wood rotted and like things nested and broke things, and there was squirrels in there and all sorts of things. But anyway, it's kind of. like I was like upset in the beginning, but then it's actually kind of funny. The whole like the zoo that was already up there.
Yeah.
And also the weird thing is I've got a semi-detached house. So I asked them, if you're up there, can you look at my neighbour's house? Because if this happened to her, it would just completely destroy her financially because she's a single mum. So if she's
Mm.
got beginning problems, she has to get them fixed now, or she'll end up the same as me with like the roof off and a new one
Was
on.
was that spreading the other side?
But yeah, weirdly, they all decided they want to live in mine. But then that's the whole thing about all of these things like therapies, and we all want more birds and wildlife and butterflies in our gardens. So when you get into electroculture and therapies, and
Mm.
this new thing I'm into is this energy egg. I think I posted the Dutch links as soon as I got them in the group because people are always looking for harmonizers and water structurers because the
Yeah, I
eggs.
think you did. Yeah.
Yeah, the small egg's about €200, and lots of people can't afford a cosmic tower. And the man is very ethical, so he doesn't overcharge people, and he's an expert in water. But then all of these like things which harmonize obviously attract wildlife because they want to live somewhere that's nice. And unfortunately, they
Yeah,
don't.
you're right. With all
Unfortunately,
your toys.
yeah, exactly. And people, and with rats and things, no matter, and cockroaches, they kind of regardless are going to live here. But normally we don't get the things we actually like the owls and everything. I have now that I've got a whole new roof. I did think, well, I might as well convert it somehow and maybe keep birds in there that they can just go in and out. Because one of my neighbours has got homing pigeons, and every couple of times a week you'll see the flap open and up and things fly out.
Wow.
I see him with his big crate and he goes off somewhere, and then like through the day I can see his doves and his pigeons coming back and
Hmm.
going in. So there's other people that keep
That's
birds around here.
nice.
And
Yeah.
apparently the crow is really intelligent. And speaking of the fungi, in the fungi book, there's a story about the fungi that degrade the cigarette butts and eat them. They've actually taught crows to go around and pick up cigarette butts and put them in the bin or the trash. So well, the crow is particularly clever. And also in the UK, you're allowed to buy owls as a pet, other than snowy owls.
Oh,
That's you're not
really?
allowed those. But I never knew that. So
There you go. Another project for you, Sarah.
yeah, exactly. But I think it's something you can, the bats also, they're a real problem because when you've got them in your roof, like pipistrelles, my
Yeah.
parents have got like hundreds and they're protected species. So you have to leave
Mm,
them up there.
yeah.
So there's also, and the
I'm
thing is,
not a bat person. Yeah, I don't really like bats.
no, they just really annoyed about it because there's basically £250,000 worth of bats in their roof. But then the bat people came and said, "Oh, they're just using your house as a roosting because they live opposite a church and bats love
Ugh.
living in church roofs." So they said they might just be temporarily lodging and they might go.
Mm.
But my mum said she went up and saw things hanging upside down and angry faces when she shone torches at them. So she came scuttling back. 'Cause I think there was big ones up there. But anyway, I think with the wildlife in the house, as long as it's controlled and they're not allowed to
Yeah.
break everything. But also, it could the holes in my roof and the rot could have because it's a 1950s house, so it could have been at this for decades. And also, the roof has said that loads of roofs in my area need doing. So it's just part of the area that you don't discover a roof problem unless you go and have it inspected. So I think the moral of the roof story is to have if I'd have inspected it 10 years ago, this wouldn't have happened
Mm.
because it would have been fixed and the problem of the
True.
animals.
Yeah.
And I think it's like it's everybody's worst nightmare to have either a car that suddenly goes for an MOT, which we have, and it's like £6,000 of repairs as a surprise, or subsidence is another one that gets people. But yeah, the roof, I would definitely, it's something that you just don't think about until it happens to you. And it's a bit like lots of things that if you can catch things early, you can save yourself a lot of money and not have to have
Yeah.
a new roof. So it's kind of it's not like we get our cars checked every year and but nobody thinks about the roof until the tile falls off or there's something
And it's
living
too
up.
late. Yeah, big hole. And yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of yeah, so yeah, I'm sure my neighbour's children were desperate to climb on the scaffolding because it's still there like all children do.
Oh,
But yeah, it
that's
was
fun.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
it was kind of interesting when the roof came off and things flew out. So Yeah, it was because the workmen found it highly entertaining. They did somebody came out and did it literally the next day. So that was lucky of me because you can sometimes
Mm.
with tradesmen it can be a nightmare. But anyway, but now the next project is I'm going to have to go up there and find out about mold. So I'll have to investigate sort of mold problems because sometimes it doesn't grow and sometimes it does, and people always ask questions about mold. And I think sometimes if the roof say if it's in the roof and it's all enclosed, even if it's moldy in there, as long as you don't open the hatch and go in, I think it kind of stays. It's when people's had a flood and the mold is growing like on every face everywhere in the ceiling, whereas if it's just like upstairs, and because I did never saw any wet on my ceiling. That's
Yeah.
the strange thing, because I think there's so much crap up there that the crap got rained on. So I did
Mm.
have a builder friend once who said to me, "Oh, don't bother to get loads of expensive loft insulation. Just put all your rubbish up there because that does the job." So I think
Oh my God, no.
actually so that's the next project. So I have to learn about mold because sometimes I think if mold is somewhere where you don't go, separate from the whole house, if you start fiddling with it, that's and asbestos as well. If you just leave it alone, it just doesn't do anything. It's when people
Mm.
start replacing ceilings and building up in the roof, that's when you discover you sprayed mold particles out from the roof into the rest of the house. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah, no,
another
and it
project.
becomes a nightmare. Yeah.
But I think it's one of these things like loads of people have had water damage because pretty much all of us have run a bath and forgotten and it's come through the ceiling, or children like to make floods. And it's just all about learning. Okay, I dried the flood really quickly, and it did mold grow. And then same with roofs, like I've mentioned it now that lots of us own a house and we've never considered what's up there because we don't go in
Mm.
it. And also, I've learnt now all about how a roof is made and what's the pieces and like the felt and the membrane and what's the job of everything. And it's definitely people think, oh, a tile fell off. Oh no, my roof. Where that's sort of not as the felt and the membranes the kind of important thing. And then the whole thing about once the membranes split or and a tile fell off and animals get in, they don't understand. They're not supposed to build things in there and they push more holes. So yeah, it's kind of
Yeah, yeah. Well, you got it fixed, so that's done.
yeah, because
All
there
right.
was actually somebody in the UK. It was like in the papers once that they had something like £100 or £150 wasp's nest up in their roof, and it was the same as me. They were doing some house renovation, and they hadn't been up in the roof for like 15 years, and there was this gigantic wasp's nest. It was basically ripe and ready to fall through. So when the wasp people came, they said basically if this had fallen through your ceiling, you would have been stung to death, and it was like the biggest wasp's nest found in Britain. So it was in the newspapers. And obviously after that, everybody went up and checked their roofs. So sometimes somebody has to have a horrible experience to
For
alert
everybody to just like
to alert
wake up.
everybody else to go and maybe go up and look in your roof and see what's in there because there could be all sorts going on in there that you don't know about.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Absolutely. All
Okay.
right, so I think we're going to wrap up. I
We,
need to run to an appointment,
Oh yes,
but
that's fine. We should have made a podcast out of all this because it was actually really actually I've recorded it, so we've kind of it was like a mini an impromptu podcast of useful information. So yeah, that was a good
that's
chat.
great. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Okay,
Have a
well,
nice weekend.
yes, and have a good weekend, everybody else.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.